Hi guys, and welcome to our first lesson on this new unit. This unit is about the Renaissance, which is one of the very important time periods in world history, especially in European history. So when we're in our study of Renaissance, we're going to focus on the years beginning in around the 1300s and going up to the end of the 17th century, so the end of the 1600s. These are the years when we see a huge change in the art and culture of Europe, and also in the way of thinking about the world and life in the minds of Europeans. So this period marks a definite change in the way of viewing the world compared to medieval times. Okay, now that's not to say that medieval times were lacking in totally lacking in art or culture, just that art and culture take a more center stage when we come to the Renaissance. Okay, the term Renaissance itself is a really important term. It actually means rebirth, and what it's referring to here is that the Renaissance takes a lot of its influence from the ancient Greek and Roman world. So you can see a link here to why we study the ancient Romans at the start of the year. And this term rebirth, the term Renaissance, means that they're taking an interest in that way of looking at the world again. They're looking to the philosophers, the great thinkers of ancient Rome and ancient Greece, and looking at how they view the world and seeing is there something they can learn from it. And there's a lot going on in the Renaissance that we need to be kind of aware of, because it really forms the way the modern world works. Okay, so to start off with, just a little bit of a task to think today, okay? And what I want you to do is, you see these characters on the board or on the screen. I'm sure most of you are kind of aware of who these characters are, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. There is a connection between these four characters and the Renaissance. And I want you to think, can anyone come up with that connection? I might want to pause here for a few seconds to have a think about it. Okay, so well done if anyone did come up with the connection. The connection here is in the names. So the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Michelangelo are named Michelangelo, Leonardo, Raphael, and Donatello, and they are all named after important artists from the Renaissance period. So well done if you got that, if you're aware of that little nugget of information. Good job. Today, what we're going to be looking at, a few objectives for today. We want to understand what the Renaissance was, and we want to be aware that the Renaissance began in Italy and for the reasons for why this was. And that's going to be our main kind of focus of understanding, is that why the Renaissance began in Italy. So, just to start off with the Renaissance, what is it? So, what I want you to do is, there's a few questions here. I'm going to have a bit of a discussion about a few of these things. I'm going to talk to you through these, but I also want you to look at the booklet which I distributed to you. And page 1 and 2 of the booklet are going to be really important for what we're discussing today. So, all of the information that I'll be going through today, or most of it at least, you can use the booklet, the first 2 pages of the booklet, to back up the information, or just to solidify your learning, or to go if you want to prefer to do a bit of reading, or you want to just go back and you don't want to have to listen to the whole video again a second time. You just look for a specific piece of information, use that booklet, make sure you're keeping up with that booklet and all the information in there. Okay, so the Renaissance, I've already discussed it a little bit there. The Renaissance is a time beginning in around the 1300s to 14th century, when Europeans, the world of Europe, changed hugely in a way that they thought about life. Okay? This was largely brought on by a group called the Humanists. And the Humanists were philosophers, very important thinkers from the time of the Renaissance. And what they encouraged people to do, or what they wanted to do, was to move away from life being entirely about the afterlife. So in medieval times, we see that people are quite obsessed almost with the afterlife. Everything that they do, they see that they're suffering in order to prove their worth to get into heaven. Everything is taught about. Every part of life is considered purely in how it relates to the afterlife. Okay, and we see that their art and their culture is very much connected to this idea of the afterlife. Whereas in the Renaissance period, the humanists want to think about how to deal with the issues in life at the moment, how to improve the world for the living, and not just considering what happens to people after they die. So they want to uh, reduce the suffering in the world, make the world a nicer place to live, and they're concerned also with nature and how the natural world and humans' relationship with the natural world. Okay, we see in Renaissance art a lot of nature being celebrated. We see very realistic paintings and drawings of humans and a celebration of the world as it is. Whereas if we look at medieval times and the art of the medieval world, which we will draw comparisons between the two at a later date, we see that they're not quite as focused on things being realistic. They're more focused on celebrating themes and ideas, whereas Renaissance want to bring those themes and ideas but look at them in a very realistic way. Okay, and you see a few pictures there from the Renaissance time, and you can see the detail that goes into making these people seem quite lifelike. Okay, so the humanists came about. One of the most famous humanists was a man named Erasmus, and they really encouraged people to view the world and think about the real world and not just be concerned only with the afterlife. Now, that's not to say they're not religious. They definitely are still quite concerned with religion and quite concerned with the afterlife. It's just not the only thing that they think about. Okay, so the first task of the day is there's 3 questions just there in front of you. So what societies did people look up to during the Renaissance? What did humanists want to do? And name the most famous of the humanist thinkers. Okay, and I want you to take a minute now. I've given you already the answer to all those questions. You can also use the first half a page in the booklet. We'll give you those answers as well. Okay, take a few minutes. Give me full sentence answers to each of those questions. That's going to be the first thing that you're going to submit to me on Teams. So I'm going to pause here and then continue when you've completed that task. Okay, so that's task 2 done. So now we're going to move on a little bit and we're going to look at the Renaissance and Italy. And we're going to look at the reasons the Renaissance began in Italy. Now, I'm going to give you 6 different reasons over the next few minutes. And what I want you to be doing is I want you to write 2 to 3 sentences explaining each of the 6 reasons why the Renaissance began in Italy. Okay, so there's 6 different reasons I'm going to go through, and you are going to explain each of them to me in a few sentences each. Okay, so the first reason why the Renaissance began in Italy comes down to the influence from ancient Rome. Okay, so we know that ancient Rome obviously was based around where we would consider modern day Italy to be. And the ancient Romans left a very, very strong physical mark on the country, on their empire. So in Italy, we have a lot of these structures still visible. So things like the Colosseum, okay? The people in Renaissance times can still see parts of the Colosseum. We have the Roman Forum now, whilst it may not be, it had to be excavated at a later date and kind of wasn't totally taken care of. There's still an influence of architecture from the ancient Romans present there, so people could see what had been created by previous societies, and there was an interest in who these people were naturally as a result. We also had a lot of the writings and work of ancient Roman and Greek philosophers and thinkers would have been more easily accessible in the Renaissance period to the Italians rather than any other parts of the world. Because remember, everything is going to be, handwritten, very few copies of things, not, as widely available as we find nowadays, where, with the internet, everything's available to us. To them, there's only a few copies of most things. Italy had a greater quantity of this based on the fact that the Romans had lived there than most of the rest of the world. So very, very influenced by the ancient Romans. Okay. We have the second reason for this is quite a slightly complicated one, which I'm going to go into now, and it's called the Fall of Constantinople. So I'm going to give you a quick, brief history lesson of about, a course of 600-700 years in the space of 2 minutes. Essentially, we know that the ancient Roman Empire fell in around the late 400s, late 5th century. However, it didn't completely fall. Now, it moved away from mainland Europe. However, some of the empire was still retained, except it had a new capital, and this capital was Constantinople. Constantinople is where modern day Istanbul is. Okay, so to show you on a map here, you can see over here we have Macedonia, and this Constantinople is just here, and this is where modern day Istanbul is. Now, you can see on a map that the empire lasted quite well up until about the year 1000. So in 1020, you have all this pink area is still part of this empire. However, over time, the empire became less and less powerful. By the time we reach 1360, we have only this small red area actually still being directly controlled by Constantinople. Now, Constantinople was primarily a European-style city when it first began. Okay, the people surrounding the city, though, and people in where you can see marked as Asia Minor, modern-day Turkey, didn't always appreciate the role that European culture and the Constantinople elite had in this area, and so there was a lot of fighting between the people of Asia Minor and the people living within Constantinople. Also, you can see that this city is very, very important in terms of its location because it's the land bridge between the Eastern world and European world. It's the most direct way to get from the Middle East into Europe. Okay, and you have to pass through Constantinople. So in the year 1453, eventually the Ottoman Turks actually took over this area. And the people who had lived there, the people of Constantinople, a lot of them now found themselves in danger and had to flee away from Constantinople. And when they left, they fled back to Italy. Italy was the area that they found was closely culturally connected to them, and was an area that they could find safety. And when they came back, they brought a lot of their ideas. So a lot of great thinkers from this area came back to Italy. So now Italy has a concentration of academics and people and great philosophers there. So the fall of Constantinople really affects who's living in Italy and brings a lot of academia back there. Okay. We also have a huge amount of wealth in Italy. So if we think about the map was just there, as the trade comes from the east into Europe, Italy is one of the main stopping points for the merchants. They stop here to sell a lot of their goods onwards, and then the goods make their way out of Italy. But a lot of the goods come through Italy, and this allows the Italians to gain a huge amount of wealth. Okay, because the goods are primarily being sold to Italians and being sold on by Italians, so they gain a huge amount of wealth through this. These explorers, these merchants also bring ideas from the eastern side of the world, and so in Italy you have this big mixing pot of European ideas, you have ideas from Constantinople, and now you have ideas from the East all mixing together, and a lot of great thinkers and people are being challenged in their way of viewing the world because of this mixing pot of different cultures and ideas that's gathering in the area. I'm just going to keep moving quite fast. Italy at the time, it's important to understand, was not a single country as we would understand it today. Rather, the country of Italy was made up of a lot of smaller city-states, which you can see in the map here. So you see you have the city-state of Florence, and then your city-state of Venice and Milan, etc. Now, each of these city-states was actually in competition with the others and wanted to prove that it was better than all the other ones around it. Okay, so what you find is that the Medici, say, who were very powerful in Florence, wanted to show that Florence was the greatest of the city-states and far better than its neighbours, and so they wanted to prove this, and they did this by a thing called patronage. So patronage is where these very, very wealthy people were prepared to pay huge amounts of money to artists, for example, to create beautiful works of art, so they could then display them and say, look at how great Florence is because we have produced this great work of art. We're clearly better than all of you other city-states. So competition between the states and patronage becomes very, very important. There are two separate reasons here, but they're very much connected, also connected obviously with the wealth as well. So there are kind of the 6 reasons for why the Renaissance really began in Italy. You can see they're all connected, but they're all distinct different reasons as well. Okay, so task 3, this is Lorenzo de Medici. This is one of the great patrons of Florence, one of the people who paid a huge amount of money to a great artist to produce great works of art. Okay, so task 3, as I've already mentioned, I want 2 to 3 sentences, please, for each of these 6 reasons, just explaining what each of them means, and that's going to also be submitted alongside task 2 on Teams to me today. Okay, now we'll go through some of the questions you might have around this. We'll talk through some of these reasons again on Friday's live lessons. Don't forget, Friday's lesson is live. But if you have any immediate questions, please just drop me an email and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Okay guys, thanks and good luck with the work.